Welcome back to One Winning Pod, where the Ravens managed to lose the last game, not win a meaningless game like they did in 2019 against the Steelers. And we're going to very briefly talk about that because, we don't really care too much. Frankly, we'll talk about other things in this show, including a regular season recap. But guys, interesting game. We had some chitter chatter before the show that kind of led us to think we have more to talk about this game than maybe we thought. But my overarching thought, my number one thing is I didn't need this, anxiety stressor in my life of watching so many starters play. I was very frustrated with the practice squad call-ups and their usage. I thought it was absolutely negligent, frankly, to play some of the players that they did for as long as they did and not having adequate backups. I really think Bench Mason being in the game as a call-up over Lucien or another safety was a huge mistake, and I would love to know why. That'd been my question, is why, when you had limited defensive back depth that you wanted to use, did you not call up another? How bad could this player be? And then again, in a game that saw so many offensive linemen play, why did Saleh not get any snaps? Those have been my questions for Mr. Harbaugh. And that was really frustrating. I'm glad that we left with mostly no injuries. I'm a little concerned about the Stone injury and the Owe injury, but with 2 weeks, it sounds like those should be okay. But it's just so much anxiety for me.
I feel like it's another point toward expanded rosters in the regular season, I think Harbaugh talked about it. Just the, preseason, you got 90 players. You've got the depth to be able to put out those guys and, try to, play with your third stringers, fourth stringers, things like that. And you don't have to put out your starters for a lot of those. But week 18, you don't really have a choice. I get that there are other names that could have been brought up. But even then, to your point, Madubuike was playing until the fourth quarter. Our leading sack guy. That was crazy. I thought it was crazy he was running around there. But you look at the defensive line players we have behind him. We already had a rotation, and we just kind of had to have some of those guys take snaps. Even Queen, we didn't really want him to have all those snaps, but with the injuries to inside linebacker, he had to come back in the game. Fortunately, he was okay, but we know he's been dealing with some little things here and there. So, yeah, wasn't great. It was weird, also going into it too. Just, was it did the Ravens want to win that game? Did they would kind of just give a little bit of lip service? Think they were going to win the game, but kind of partially committed. It was a little weird, but at the end of the day, man, I don't know, whatever. We got the 1 seed. We're just looking forward to the playoffs. I got to stay locked in on that. I don't think anybody's evaluating the Ravens or roster or anything based on this game. So,
yeah, if they are, I don't know what to say. Yeah, like you're saying, this was kind of a one of the downsides to locking up the number 1 seed early, right? Is that you have to think about how you approach a game that has literally no, I shouldn't say literally no meaning, because there is one thing that we'll talk about that I did creep into the back of my mind at the end of the game. But yeah, like you said, the Ravens, obviously, number 1 seed, couldn't advance in the standings. There was nowhere to advance. You don't get 2 buys if you get maintain the 1 seed through that after already locking it up. So, yeah, I think it's a tough ask for the coaches. Who do you play? Who do you don't? I hear what you're saying about the practice squad guys, but you also got to look at it and think how much of the playbook do they know? How much of the playbook are the coaches willing to put them out for? And you put the argument out there, obviously you are saving someone like Geno Stone, who unfortunately, like we said, is in concussion protocol, right? He's in concussion protocol, I believe.
I think it's just an ankle or knee.
Just ankle? Okay. Sorry, Brent Urban's in concussion protocol.
Yeah, Brent Urban is in concussion.
Got those two injuries mixed up. Yeah, I think the flip side of that argument, which the coaches might go to, is, like you said, if they don't know as much the playbook, or you don't feel confident they're ready to do their job against, a team that's obviously going out there and playing for something, you could make the argument there, and by reaction, they're putting some other players in injury. Maybe some other guys have to step up and overcompensate for blocks they're missing, assignments they're missing. It's and then that could put them at risk for injury because you can't rest everybody. Like Chris just said, the roster expansion is what it is. It's an enviable but unenviable position for the Ravens, right? Because enviable because they've locked up the 1 seed, they had nothing to play for, but unenviable because they had to face that dilemma. Like we said, at the end of the day, got through it without having to suffer through what Detroit has with Sam Laporta. Hopefully for them, he's able to play through that injury, but hyperextended knee doesn't sound great for a 1 week turnaround. But yeah, weird game. I too did not watch it terribly closely. I was ready to watch it really closely because I thought we were getting snow, but then once I found out that it was just going to be a rain drenching, my interest in the game plummeted significantly. But we don't get many snow games here. We literally only had one in Ravens history at the bank, to my understanding, just that game in 2013 against Minnesota. I don't think there's been maybe some flurries, but no snow for a game since or before that. I was a little disappointed there. I was like, there was actually something to watch, and then Maryland weather did its thing.
Maryland weather, man. Yeah, just it's so weird. I remember, Dolphins game. We're looking at the weather forecast. We're like, oh man, it's gonna snow next week. It just keeps going down and down and down and down and down until it's finally rained. And I mean, it looked miserable. I don't know about what the broadcast you did watch, but I mean, it looked absolutely terrible. I mean, even thinking about the Rams game earlier this year, the rain pretty much stopped. It was pretty mild throughout the game.
Mm-hmm.
Or the 49ers game, I don't know, even on the broadcast, man, it was definitely noticeable. So I'm kind of glad we gave away our tickets.
All I know is I saw someone joke that the Squeegee Boys should have been asked to join the stadium to clean off the lenses.
Oh no!
And I was like, that's kind of hilarious because it was pretty bad at the beginning, wasn't it? You couldn't see anything.
I know.
It was just a blur. Oh gosh, I was like, yeah, they could transition from outside the stadium to inside. That'd be great. But
oh man,
I tell you, to me, it was frustrating because I was like, oh, this is going to finally be the Trent Simpson game. I can't wait to watch him. And then I see PQ out there, and I'm like, why is Pro Bowler Patrick Queen playing in this game? It's ridiculous. And then he finally came in the second half, replacing Phillips, and then or playing alongside Phillips, I guess, rather. And then Phillips got hurt, so then Queen had to come back in. But Simpson did show some splashes, which was great. He kind of reminded me of 2020 Queen, which is phenomenal for a third-round pick versus a first-round pick. I think he played really well, and I'm super excited to do it all over again. Maybe he'll be a little faster than Queen. Who knows? But it seems like Queen's not going to be on this team next year, and I think Simpson could play really well. But I also think Phillips, as much crap as I gave Delshon Phillips in the year 2022, year 2023, he showed a lot in preseason, and he's a very competent player, I think. And that's great for your platoon inside linebacker. I could see him using both of them next year if they're both on the team. I think they both showed ability. But obviously, I think the team would love Simpson to be the number one in that rotation if there is one, and maybe become a every down guy like PQ became.
Yeah, certainly could. A couple of good things from him. I mean, showed off his speed. It was a really well executed blitz. Basically had a free rush to the quarterback. Ended up getting the sack there. And, tackling I thought was pretty good. I mean, I feel like it wasn't, I feel like you could tell not necessarily the same as a starter. Cause I feel like the tackling of jumping on top of a guy and bringing him down, it's impressive and everything. But you try to do that with players week in, week out, you're just going to look silly. But even then, it was a good tackle. I think he had another one where he kind of hit the guy pretty hard. Would have got away and bounced away, but he ended up grabbing an ankle, which was good. You like to see that, get the hands on guys and trip them up and, make sure you hold on to them. So that was good. But yeah, I mean, a lot of positive things. I think he had a good play at the goal line as well. Ended up getting the tackle for loss as well. So yeah, I mean, definitely encouraging to see. We haven't seen a whole lot of him just because, Rowe and PQ have been so good.
The biggest thing that I was excited to see from him was improvement from the preseason. The same thing that we've seen from Tavius Robinson when he's had to go out there for extended snaps. I mean, he looked like the guy that we thought he would be in his rookie year coming out. Of course, this season hasn't really gone the way we would have liked for him. We would have liked him to have more opportunities, but yeah, there's certainly seems like there's going to be some things there that the Ravens can build on. Some playmaking ability, there's definitely things to work with there. Excited to see what he does next year. Hopefully we don't need him in the postseason because that would likely mean an injury somewhere that we don't want to have to deal with. But great showing for him, and definitely put a lot of highlights there on film, and that's exactly what you wanted to see from him in this game.
No doubt, we saw more Tavius Robinson this game than normal. A little bit more Travis Jones, which is fun. But those guys, I think, are going to be big parts of the 2024 Ravens. As we have some turnover, imaginably, with some of these mercenaries and fourth-year guys maybe disappearing. And then, I don't know, again, unbelievable to me that Marcus Williams, who's had more injuries on this team than anyone who's actively playing, somehow managed to have 100% of snaps. Felt, again, like I said, very irresponsible, and maybe one day they'll learn. Who knows? I can't understand it. I would love to know the rationale, but I was a little disappointed in the offense, guys. I must say, I don't know about you guys. The score was identical. It was a push. They literally need to score one more point from them to go over the point total from last time. It was the exact same score, and I'm just so frustrated by that. I thought this offense should have been able to score more than 10 points. And frankly, I think it was that darn, conditions with that pick. If we had gone a pick early with Marcus Williams, that would have been good field position. I think that could have been a difference maker for the whole game, frankly. Because it sounded like they need a short field position. So, I don't know. It was a little surprising, but it felt like the playbook was extremely condensed. And because of the conditions, they weren't pushing it too much.
Yeah, it's weird. It feels like, kind of go back to the Rams game, right? That was another game where weather was kind of a factor up until kickoff, and then it kind of tapered down a little bit. It felt like going into that game, it was like, okay, it's a run-heavy formula. Let's just pound the ball. And then it started letting up, and they're like, okay, nope, we're going to pass the ball the whole time. Whereas, this one, going in, it was just raining nonstop the whole time. Absolutely miserable. So, yeah, I mean, it was... I'm not sure how much we want to read into it because we knew the game didn't really matter in the grand scheme of things for the Ravens. For the Steelers, obviously, I think it mattered a little bit more. But for that, I don't know how much concern I have here. But we have been noticing some signs of maybe the run game slowing down after the Keaton injury, and this was another game that sort of felt like, with the Steelers being able to run pretty well against them over the last couple of years, we didn't really see that as much. It didn't really take over the game. I don't know. Are you guys concerned about that going into the playoffs? Do you think we'll be okay? Was it just because of what the game was to the Ravens that we didn't really pull out all the stops?
Yeah, I'm concerned about the running game. I've been concerned about it, since Keane left. That's why I was so worried about with the 49ers game. I was not sure if we'd had the horses for it. But the thing is, I think Hill's playing a little bit on the higher end of his expected value. Dalvin Cook, the savior, is now here. I kind of jest, but I think he has full agency of the number 3 back after Melly had the fumble, which I think actually might have been a blessing in disguise, by the way, guys. Because Melly had a lot of institutional backing, so to speak, having been here all year and being good guy Greg. But that fumble might really open things up to actually see him get used, Dalvin, if he's better. But I don't know if he's going to be better, for what it's worth. But I think...
All right, so hold on. I got to push back a little bit. Here on this running narrative here. Okay, so Keaton Mitchell suffered his injury against the Chargers, right?
Was it?
I'm almost positive it was against the Chargers.
I believe so, yeah.
Going into the bye?
Yeah.
Oh.
Or no. Hold on. You guys are right. No. He did play in the Rams game. He played...
Yeah, it was a Rams game.
Against... Yeah. It was against Jacksonville. Sorry, I knew it was a Sunday night game. All right. So
was the other primetime game.
So we really don't have a large sample size on this. So you look against San Francisco. That was the first game. We've only seen 2 games with the starting offense out there without Keaton. And yeah, so against San Francisco, not terribly great. Lamar was able to do his thing. Gus, 9 carries for 31 yards. Justice, only 10 for 26. Against the Dolphins, of course, though, much different story. 32 carries, 160 yards, 5 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns. Justice Hill, granted, it was really just one big run, 41 yards on one run. He had 3 carries in total, 48 yards. So not too much you can tell from there. Gus was actually pretty good, 16 for 68, 4.3. Not a huge day from him, not a bad one either. I just don't think we have enough data really yet to say yes or no that the run game has been significantly impacted, without Keaton. And I think, you look at this game, sure, the Ravens didn't get a ton out of it, but I think again it goes kind of back to the narrative. You don't want to run Gus so many times to get him in a groove, because then you're exposing him to injury, right? Same thing goes with Justice. And also, we know that this offense benefits so much in the run game when Lamar Jackson is back there. Tyler Huntley is just not the same running threat as Lamar Jackson. We've talked about this so many times that yes, Huntley can run. That does not mean that he's as effective as Lamar Jackson.
I can run
they're
too.
completely different types of athletes. So I mean, I agree with you. I think that it is something that going into the postseason, I hope the coaches are looking at it and they're looking at it like, hey, look, we did lose a big weapon here with Keaton. We have trust in Gus. We have trust in Justice. Dalvin's done a lot with his career. Maybe he's got something left in the tank. And obviously there's Lamar back there, but I still don't know that we know enough to say like one way or the other, if this running game is ineffective without Keaton, right?
Yeah. Well, that's why I'm concerned. I think like you said, Peter, we don't have enough of a sample size. So like when Keaton got hurt, I was just concerned, and I'm still concerned because like I haven't seen enough either way to make me feel warm and fuzzy. But I truly don't care. I think the offense will be fine. Like, I don't think the running game needs to be the focus. Like, if you can't get the running game going with Lamar Jackson and all the passing weapons we have now, and you can't keep them off balance, then that's a bigger problem. I think that's a blocking problem, or something, because I definitely think it should be okay. So I'm not horribly concerned. I just think it won't be as explosive. I think that's the number one thing. I think the explosive play threats definitely decreased. And explosives in the run game are fun. So, but overall, I think we'll be okay there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think looking at just the context of the game, right? Steelers knew what we were going to try and do. We're going to run the ball. We're going to throw these short passes. We know Huntley doesn't have the arm to be able to do the same things that Lamar can do, and it was just so ineffective, right? And I mean, from my perspective, part of it I think is a continuation of the run game just being like sort of different with the Keaton injury over the last couple of weeks. But I think you're right, Peter. Like there is an aspect of like, this game tells us what I think everybody's already starting to realize, is that Lamar is the MVP. When you take him out, the offense looks very different, not only in the pass game, but in the run game too. So I think the good news for the offense too, and we have seen this over the last couple of weeks, is just they're way more explosive in the pass game, particularly over the last couple of weeks. Even though the run game isn't generating those explosive plays, we're generating a ton of plays in the pass game with Lamar. So if the first team offense, everyone comes out healthy, and in the divisional round, like I feel like the Steelers game is not really a speed bump. It's just it is what it is. It's just a game we had to get through to be able to get to the playoffs.
The last final comment I have personally on this game before we get into other stuff we want to talk about this episode, and maybe I'm just being paranoid, but I just look at this game and I think the Ravens played it correctly in the sense that, they didn't go all out to try and win it. Should Lamar have played a few drives or not? That's something we can debate later. But, one unfortunate side effect of what the Ravens did is the Pittsburgh Steelers are now in the playoffs, 9-8. They are the 7th seed after Jacksonville lost. I don't know if you guys saw that CBS picked up. There were several Steelers fans at the Tennessee Stadium, all decked out, waving the terrible towels, rooting for the Jaguars to lose so they'd make the playoffs. I mean, obviously we're not Steelers fan, but I think you have to respect that dedication there. But, I would not be shocked. I think there is a non-zero chance here that the Ravens divisional playoff game will be a repeat of this game. I am not convinced that the Bills will 100% beat the Steelers. I think that the Bills will win that game, but I've seen enough from the Bills this year to know that they are a weaker Bills team than we have seen in years past. And Josh Allen I don't know what's going on with him this year. He just feels like he's just going to throw the ball wherever. I don't think he cares. He doesn't care if it goes to his guy, it's into the stands, into the opposing. Gosh, even Sean McDermott, pretty aggressively calling him out in the halftime interview before they all went into the tunnel. I mean,
yeah,
and their defense is not what it's been in years past. Look, I think Buffalo will win that game. I think they'll win that game. All I'm saying is I think there's a chance the Steelers win. And then you got the Steelers coming into Baltimore with the confidence of hey, look, we can put some asterisks on here, but they did sweep us this year. I don't know. It's an interesting one. Again, like I said, I think Baltimore played it right. I do not think they should have tried to go all out and win the game, but you did leave open an interesting scenario that I think, we'd like to avoid going forward, even though on paper, it feels like if that matchup happened, we should be able to beat the Steelers pretty easily.
Oh, the Steelers. Look, man, if we can't beat those guys, and I'm going to give them a little bit more respect than you did, 10-7, okay? A whole
they're 10-7? All right.
Yeah, they were 10-7.
Apologies to Steve.
But they had negative 20-point differential, and they were bottom half of the league. They are frauds. The 2023 Ravens have a 203-point differential. We are not frauds. If we lose to the frauds in the divisional, shame on us. I can't be worried about this. I understand they have some confidence, but I don't think the Ravens are gonna think any. I think it's almost the right blend. It makes the Ravens a little hungry because they haven't done it yet this year, but they actually have the horses. Whereas the Steelers might be a little overconfident that they can do it, and they do not have the horses. So I definitely think we should be able to win that game confidently, and shame on us if we don't, because they're actually the worst team, right? in the AFC playoffs. In fact, by point differential perspective, they are probably the worst team in the playoffs. Yep, they are. So yeah, they're so bad. There's not the next closest team is the Eagles at 1. So,
the Eagles, wow, they've fallen far.
I know, haven't they? It's incredible. But yeah. So I mean, I just can't be worried about the Steelers being a bite in our butts. I would love to see them if they beat the Bills. That'd be my favorite team. But I've said in the chat multiple times, I'm not here to get the best person to come into the bank that I think we have the highest win percentage. Nameless, faceless opponents. Let's kick their butts and move on. I don't care who you have to play. January Joe, bring it. CJ Stroud, bring it. Every single team, bring it. I'm I don't care. Miami, sure. Bring it. I'm just that's my mentality with all these teams. I don't care. It's so clear to me that we're the best team in the AFC. All we have to do now is take care of business. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the Watt injury, I think, is really gonna hurt them for sure. I mean, they have other great players on defense, but I kind of look at it and they beat us, but I don't necessarily think that they're a team that's hot right now. Which I mean can happen, right? Teams can go and play really hot and then catch fire in the playoffs. They don't really feel like it seemed like that. I think their defense is playing well. I think it could be exploited. I think obviously the weather I think was difficult. I think Huntley as a quarterback, I think just couldn't challenge them in the same way that Lamar can. And their offense, I mean, kudos to them. I guess their running game is a lot better. I remember so many games playing against Najee where he would get like 3 yards a carry and just look awful, but get a touchdown in a random place in the game. This game, him and Warren look pretty good, but then you have Rudolph. Yeah, he could make some good throws, and he did this game, but long term, game to game, like, does it really feel like a team that's going to get hot and win a couple games? I don't know. Very iffy. I do definitely agree with you, though. There's a non-zero chance that they could beat Buffalo, because Buffalo is like, they are the Jekyll and Hyde of this playoffs here, man. Like, they can win any game, they can lose any game. Sometimes it feels like in the same game. Like,
I'm most worried about the Bills.
Me. Oh, I'm not worried. I'm not worried. I'm not worried about them at all.
I say I'm most worried about them. I don't know if I'm not worried. Like, I'm not saying I'm not worried. Like, I maybe the Chiefs a little bit more, but I would say I'm most worried about the Bills in a way. Just because they're so Jekyll and Hyde. Like, you don't know what you're going to get. At least, like, the Chiefs, it's like they got no wide receivers.
Nah. No. I think, well, I mean, I don't know. They're like a weirder version of the Ravens, man. It's like, all the losses even before this one, we were just like, oh, man, why did we lose these teams? We beat ourselves, right? Bills are like that, but like times 10. They make so many more stupid mistakes and things like that. I mean, somehow, single-handedly, Josh Allen just like making crazy dumb mistakes and things like that. I don't know. I wouldn't get worried about that. The only team in the playoffs that really worry me has nothing to do with Joe Flacco, is everything but the Cleveland Browns. Their defense is still playing good.
That's fair.
And they're just freaking bullies on their offensive line. And like, they know they have a roster that matches up pretty well against us. And it's just because we're not built for that. We built our team for like the Bengals and the Chiefs and the Bills, not for the Browns.
I'm concerned about Pittsburgh. I do think they're hot. They're plus 37 over their last 3 games. This offense has actually, Mason Rudolph has actually unlocked this passing offense. Deontay Johnson and George Pickens are looking like the playmakers they should have looked like all season and still are. Defensively, the TJ Watt injury is huge. I think when you always have to respect a Mike Tomlin-led team, even though it has been several years since he's made a deep playoff run. You'd say the same thing about John Harbaugh as well. But yeah, I look at the AFC playoff picture, and honestly, I think that what I will say is, I do think you are right. The Bills, are very Jekyll and Hyde, but you do have to respect they have a 5-game win streak. They're 7-2 at home, 500 on the road. So you like that this game's in Buffalo. Hopefully that is enough to get the Steelers out of the picture. But man, the Steelers and Browns, I think, are the 2 teams, honestly, for me, outside of the Bills, that I have the most concern about with the playoffs. Dolphins, if we had to go to Miami, I'd be concerned. I don't think they're a good road team this year. And actually, they really haven't been a good road team for some time, even the past 2 seasons before that. Kansas City, I think they're done. And Houston's interesting, but I mean, rookie quarterbacks never made their way to the Super Bowl in NFL history. Now, it's the first time for everything, but I'm not too concerned about that personally. But we'll see. If I'm looking at the teams that actually scare me right now, as far as real challengers to the Ravens in the field, I think it's the Bills number 1, the Browns number 2, and then the Steelers number 3 for me. And I'm being serious about that.
I respect it, and I think it's reasonable for you to say all that, considering the only losses we have to these teams in the playoffs in the AFC side are against the Browns and the Steelers. So reasonable. I think I want to pose this question to you guys. This is how I always like to think about opponents, because I always have that like mantra of like, everyone in the playoffs is good, they deserve to be there, blah blah blah, except for maybe the Steelers. But like, I want the best box set, like, give me a good box set. And I think the best box set for Ravens Super Bowl victory would be bring Joe Flacco to the bank. So play the Browns, and then I would want to play the Bills, because there'll be a redemption arc for the 2020 season where we just barely lost to them in Buffalo. They come to our house, they lose, and then we'll see about the Super Bowl. I would say I'd probably want San Francisco, just because like the 2 best Devoa teams, like, going after it, a repeat of the Super Bowl 47, blah 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 blah. But yeah, I think that's my box set. How about you guys?
I think yours is good. And honestly, it might be my number one pick, but I'm going to give an alternative one that I like pretty close to that, just to keep this interesting. I'll say that my box set would be that the Steelers do upset the Bills, and they come here, and we have to prove that we actually were the better team. No asterisks there. That 2-0 didn't mean anything. We get through that game. Then the AFC Championship is the rematch with Flacco. I think that. Yep, he'll get him all the way there. Get him all the way there, and then we send Joe back to the couch at that game. And then for the Super Bowl, we've seen a lot of the Ravens in San Francisco. I want to say, and I would be shocked if this happens, but I'm going to say I would think the better box set would be we go up against the Cowboys.
Just because of the allure of Cowboys?
What's that?
Just because of the allure of Cowboys and like,
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I thought about it too. Yeah.
That'll be a really interesting one. I would be really interested to see what side the national media would take on that one, because I feel like the Cowboys get so much crap for being has-beens, the dynasty of yesteryear. But I think they do still have a lot of fans as well. And then of course, Baltimore's never been a media darling, certainly not the Ravens. Lamar Jackson has gotten, he's had a lot of media, but a lot of detractors as well. So, I think that could be a really interesting one. You got our defense going up against Cowboys offense that would be hot at that point, if they made it that far. That could be really interesting. And Lamar, look, that Cowboys defense been inconsistent, but when they've been on. So that could be a really, really interesting matchup if it came down to that.
Yeah, I think initially, just to answer, I feel like I had a blend of what you guys mentioned. I think, I was going to say like Steelers, Browns, just because we've, 3 of our losses have come from those teams, 3 out of the 4. So beating them again for the third game in for the third game of the season for each one, that'd be nice, especially with the Joe Flacco storyline. Like, I feel like it's got to happen. That's like the Vader Obi-Wan Kenobi moment, like we gotta have that. And then Super Bowl, right now, man, like I feel like it's weird. Like I ordinarily don't like to say that it's just like the one seeds going there, but like the Niners are such a complete team, and I don't know, every other like NFC team are just like deeply flawed or just have tons of injuries. Like as much as I'd love to say like the Bucks or something, like I mean they just barely snuck in, man. Like they're 9-8. Like I mean Baker's playing good, but is he going to play good enough to beat all those other teams? I don't know.
I will say I'm a little concerned about the Cowboys. I was trying to figure this out. Like, what NFC team has the biggest appeal? Because that really drives ticket prices, for a Super Bowl game if like we don't get the lottery. And I'm like, man, like I'm just so curious, like if what the prices would be for a big team like the Cowboys. But I think San Francisco is just as big, so that doesn't really help. I don't know. It'd have to be like the Bucks, like you were saying, Chris, like to like keep prices down. I guess I don't know.
Yeah,
which would be funny.
Yeah.
Baker Mayfield.
Do we think the Packers are going to make some noise? I mean, I know we're talking.
I think
NFC
the Packers are the best 7
like,
seed in a long, long time. I mean, there haven't been that many 7 seeds, frankly, but I think they might be the best 7 seed ever. I would love to look at that.
Yeah, I mean, they. I feel like the whole season they were kind of looking on the outside, looking in, and they were able to sneak in the last second. Jordan Love's playing pretty good. He could do some damage. They're trending up for sure. Whereas, like you have some of the other teams, like Philadelphia has been trending down a little bit. I think the Bucks are probably right where they were. And other teams like the Chiefs and Dolphins and stuff like that, they're trending down. So you never know. Yeah, I feel like out of the other low seeds, they're probably the one that I would put if I were putting money on it. Like I would say that they probably have the best chance of making it further of all the low seeded teams.
Yeah, with all the parity, in the league this year, it really could be a very interesting, upset riddled postseason. Or it could also be, since it's been so top heavy as well, just one straight to the Super Bowl. Ravens Niners as they knock off the Bills and the Cowboys respectively in their championship games. One or the other is either going to go exactly as planned or it's going to be total chaos. I feel like there's going to be no in between.
Guys, what else are we going to talk about? Problem is we've got like 2 weeks until our next game. I don't know what we're going to do. This is like the off season.
Well, I mean, next week we're going to know who the Ravens are playing, right? So I guess we can do the matchup breakdown then.
Yeah.
Pulling
all the stops, try to get a guest, really do it up, Peter, you had a study you want to talk to us about. The resting, right?
Yeah, I did. I don't know if you guys saw the chart.
Yeah.
It's definitely got some interesting things, but it might be more useful to talk about it next episode. Yeah, because I'll actually say the initial study showed, first off, there's actually, what's fascinating about it is not many in the past decade, which is as far back as I did the study, very few teams that have secured the bye rest their starters. Like the Ravens are in the high minority of that, of teams who did that. And so only a 5-game sample size, but teams that did do that do have a losing record at 2-3. But again, we're dealing with a very small sample size. So I thought that part of it was interesting. But again, you can look at those games and there's some backstories you can look into it. A lot of those teams had young quarterbacks. Like you had Carolina in there with Cam Newton's first playoff game. Obviously, Lamar had played in the playoffs, but he was young, still in his career. Dak Prescott's first playoff game, that was 3 of the games right there. The other 2, inexplicably, Pittsburgh lost to Jacksonville after resting their starters back in 2017. That's one I don't know how you explain away. There was one other game. I'll have to look closer at that. Yeah. But I was really fascinated to see that resting starters is in recent times has been a very, uncommon practice, because I feel like it used to be pretty commonplace. I mean, gosh, week 17 used to always be Curtis Painter week. It felt like, for the Colts. That's what I remember. Maybe if I go back a further decade, there'll be more instances of it. But that was the part that was most surprising, was that, teams aren't resting starters these days if they've secured the bye.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. Nice teaser for the study. But I guess before we wrap up, we want to talk about the regular season recap of kind of like position groups. So maybe give a scorecard. And we'll start with quarterback. We'll give it the layup. Lamar Jackson having an MVP level season. Hopefully wins it. We believe he should. Stayed healthy the whole time. Give it a big old A.
I think so. Even with Huntley's performance, in the game, it was only really one game. Well, I guess he came in a couple other games.
When they announced it, Pro Bowler Tyler Huntley.
Yeah. For limited plays. I mean, I don't think it was Huntley's best season, as a pro. I mean, I think 2021, obviously he came in for a couple of games, but yeah, I mean, with Lamar playing this year, definitely A.
Yeah, I mean, look, can we knock him for, not throwing for the 6,000 passing yards he said he would? I mean, obviously, we all knew that wasn't going to happen. Would have been nice to see him break 4,000. Would have been nice to see him throw for over 30 touchdown passes. But I mean, at the end of the day, really, the numbers, they don't really mean as much if you did what you needed to do. He got the job done. The numbers are good numbers. They're not numbers that you take the record away and you look at them and you say it was necessarily a great year, in my opinion, just because of how high quarterback numbers are inflated in today's NFL. A decade ago, those numbers look great. In today's NFL, they look, I don't want to say pedestrian, but not necessarily MVP worthy. But, in my opinion, that kind of shows why stats are, in a sense, overrated. It's like, what did you do to benefit the team? Lamar did everything to benefit the team that he could. He also had some touchdowns dropped by receivers this year. We know that. That number actually probably should be at 30.
Sure. I mean, we're number 4 in the league for points scored by the offense. So feels good. feels good enough. and we had 2 stinkers in there. 1 game without Lamar, and I mean, definitely okay.
All right, my point with his numbers is simply like if I told you, going into the season, the MVP candidate for the league, will have 3,600 passing yards and 24 touchdowns. Like, and you don't see the name attached to it. You don't see what the situation was. I don't think you necessarily, in a vacuum, think that that's an MVP performance. Was my point there.
But you do probably think it's Lamar Jackson, frankly.
I mean, him or Jalen Hurts, right?
Yeah, it's like that screams like, okay, probably a running quarterback, probably a magician, Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, there are a lot of quarterback injuries this season. A whole heck of a lot of them. So, I mean, even the playing field is a lot smaller than it usually is.
For sure. Chris, do you want to lead in running back?
Yeah, running back. I think overall, this position group had higher potential, I think, that we were hoping for. The Dobbins injury, I think, really put a damper on things early. Gus has done well, set career highs in touchdowns, rushing yards, below in yards per carry, as we've been relying on him a lot more this season. Justice Hill, I think it's his best year, but in the middle, wasn't really used a whole lot. I think he was overtaken by Keaton Mitchell. Keaton, I think everyone here would agree, although he got hurt in the Jacksonville game, I think from what we saw from him, on his limited snaps. So, as a whole, I feel like I give this group kind of like a B, rounding out. I think, injuries, I think, sapped us of a lot of the potential that we thought. Could have definitely been an A if everyone was healthy. But, I will say, looking, I don't want to look too far forward here, but this is definitely a group that's going to be in transition going into 24. So, could go up, could go down. I think it depends on a lot of who's going to be here next year and, what the situation is going to be like.
I should give this group a little bit of a higher grade. I think they're very close to an A-, maybe a very high B+. The reason I say that is I think that this is the most effective year I can recall where we had the top guy go down and everyone behind him had to take on a bigger role than they had in their career. Even Gus. I mean, Gus has never been asked to be the lead guy for the extended period of time that he's had to be. Maybe he was never really a true lead guy at any point this year, but he's been RB1 on the depth chart since the injury. Keaton Mitchell was really close to eclipsing him, but even though there was some games where he started over him, I don't know if he ever outcarried Gus. I'd have to go back and look at that. Maybe in the Chargers game he might have, but I mean, you look at that. I mean, there's been so many seasons where our offense has had to become one-dimensional in recent memory, after injury to Dobbins, injury to Gus, injury to whoever. And sure, we would have liked a little more production from Gus. It certainly seems like while he had a career high in touchdowns, he's probably lost a step athletically. Justice Hill has flashed, but hasn't quite been what we wanted. And Keaton, unfortunately, his health didn't fully pan out. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think you can give it an A because no one reached their absolute potential of those 3 that you would have wanted. But I think collectively, how the Ravens were able to continue to not lose a step in the rushing game when J.K. Dobbins, unfortunately, went out way too early this year. I think overall a very, very strong year from that unit.
Interesting. I'm going to stick to my laurels. You're kind of convincing me to maybe push it up, but I was just going to go with a C, just a solid average. I don't think they were detrimental to the group, but I don't think they lifted the baseline terribly much. And I think they're about expectation for a running back group. So I'll stay with C. I could see C+, but I'm gonna stick to it.
17 big runs from the running backs and 18 touchdowns. Not doing much for you.
How many of those touchdowns were under 3 yards?
Still touchdowns.
Like, sure. I just I think there was a lot of vulturing going on, and I don't know. It's just okay. I'm gonna stick to it. But yeah, it was. I mean, it was good to see explosive plays. I thought, what I would say was the most surprise was the large receptions for running backs. I like the incorporation of the running back in the offensive scheme. I like the checkdowns to the running backs a lot. I thought that was great, and I look to see that expanded. So, like I said, you convinced me of C plus easily. Maybe I'll even like ghost C plus it. But I just wanted to say what my original thoughts were before I got tainted. Peter, why don't you give us some wide receiver takes?
Yeah, wide receiver takes is a really, really interesting one. Really, really interesting one. I think we came into the season with super high hopes for this group, and it was a real roller coaster season for so many guys here not named Zay Flowers. If we're talking about just Zay Flowers, this group gets a solid A. I think Zay Flowers came in here and did exactly what our best hopes could have been for him for this year, right? Coming in first season in the NFL, breaks Torrey Smith's receiving record for rookie, finished 28th in the NFL in receptions, even though he did finish outside of the top 32 in receiving yards. Has made some incredible plays, 12 big plays. He's been great. Outside of that, I think everyone else has been either as expected or, quite frankly, disappointment. Nelson Aguilar, I think, is what we thought he'd be. He'd make some big plays here and there and then, disappear in other games. Odell started out strong, then he got hurt. Then he looked like he was on his way out of the league. Then he caught wind again and looked pretty good down the stretch. And Rashad Bateman just doesn't get thrown to. And unfortunately has had a few more drops than you would have liked to see this year. So Zay definitely brings the group up, but I think that, the rest of the guys, just with the high expectations that we had that didn't quite get met, so I guess we got to throw Duvernay in there too. I said at the beginning of the season I didn't think Duvernay was gonna be buried. He was buried. I was wrong. He had like he might have had one reception this year against Cincinnati, and that's week 2 game, and that was it. I can't remember anything beyond that. So yeah. I give this group a C plus, which pains me to say because I think that a lot of good happened there, but I think it was way too heavily weighted towards one player, which was Zay Flowers, and I don't think we thought it was going to be that heavily weighted when we went into this season.
Yeah, you know what? I feel like you're kind of spot on. I was thinking as you were doing it, C plus as well. And yeah, the point on Duvernay, I think, is a great observation of, obviously, he was a good role situational player in the Greg Roman offenses, but and we knew he was a weapon in the return game as well. I think this is definitely a down year for him, just across the board. But yeah, I mean, I think this group has a lot more that they can offer, and I think they will in the playoffs. But if we're just looking at regular season expectations, I feel like as Ravens fans, we think that we bring in like receivers and we're gonna like tear the league by storm and everything. That didn't really happen. Obviously played really well. But as we've kind of said, stats aren't everything. So I feel like from a statistical perspective, yeah, maybe like C plus, maybe B minus if I'm being a little bit more fair. Some guys made big catches, throughout the season. It just didn't add up to the stats that we were expecting.
I was going to give him a B, and my rationale was that Zay Flowers met and exceeded all expectations. I think, frankly, from anybody. Bateman was a disappointment. I think Odell Beckham was right on. He was kind of exactly what we thought he'd be. Maybe the stats weren't quite as high as we were hoping, but that can kind of go back to playing, honestly, winning football. I think they didn't have to push the envelope too much, late in games to pass the ball to kind of force the issue. And that's why we saw them be I think I had it up. Let's see. They're the 4th highest in touchdowns for running backs. So I started looking at it, and we were number 1 in running. But not number 1 in average per carry. But yeah, number 1 rushing yards. But obviously a huge density. Our attempts was the highest by at 541. So we just didn't have many passing opportunities. I think I said Bateman was a disappointment, and for all the disappointment he was, Aguilar was a surprise, pleasant. And I thought Aguilar played quite well. Not too concerned about Duvernay at that point being wide receiver 5, not doing what we were hoping. and same thing with Tylan Wallace. Hey, I think, mattering where you want to put it, Tylan Wallace, special teams, apparently number one red zone play of the year, which is wild to me. I was like, man, the NFL didn't have that many good plays. I'm not saying it was a bad play. Like, I'm not trying to take away from it, but I'm just like, really? That's number one? Okay. I thought it was a great play, but just didn't strike me as number one of the whole year.
Well, moving on to tight end. Yeah, I mean, this is another position group, like running back. We talked next man up. I feel like B+. I feel like I got to be honest. Andrews, before the injury, was also playing really well. Had a lot of touchdowns early on in the season. Once he went down, obviously very sad. And we still hope that there's a chance that he can come back. But likely, I think I personally was down on him in the beginning of the season. I felt that the opportunities he was getting, just wasn't making plays. But I tell you, man, as soon as he's been asked to step into Andrews' shoes, I think he's been playing fantastic. Really exceeded my expectations in terms of assuming that tight end one role with Andrews being down. And Culver's played well. He's gotten a little bit more involved, particularly since the injury. I think he's done done what I expected from him. And then Ricard, if we're rounding it out, I mean, Ricard, honestly, I'm still I'm still a little shocked, I think, at his usage. I mean, we definitely had a lot of questions about how Todd Monken offense was going to use a Patrick Ricard, and I mean, he still found plays to get involved. Primarily in the blocking game, but I think he runs routes. He is a factor. Maybe not the most important factor of this passing offense, but he is a factor. So
not much to add. I thought B+ as well for this unit. And I think another great year of Likely. I think the only quibble I would have is that they did not find a way to effectively use Likely and Andrews at the same time, which was one of my number one excitements going into the year. I thought our 12 personnel was going to be absolutely devastating. I thought that Monken's experience with Bowers and the other guy at Georgia would result in a 12 personnel set that would take the world by storm. And it wasn't really quite that. At least it wasn't equitable. Likely was not doing too much. And, maybe that'll be a big expansion next year. But solid B+, and like you said, Kohler, I thought showed improvement. And Ricard, I loved his presence in this offense. And I'm actually extremely keen to understand what they do with him next year. I'm wondering if this offensive line experiment will actually go full throttle. Because imagine having an extra player on the roster and having Ricard be the Salah this year. Just opens up another spot. Like if he can legitimately in an emergency situation be a guard, and I honestly think he could, because he effectively is like a better 6 lineman whenever we put him out there. I want to see that. I want to see like the final form of Ricard of like potentially being a lineman and then going ahead and I don't know, like if you have to change his number, what the reporting issues would be, etc. But that's the 2024 Tease is like, Ricard, you gonna play more with the line?
Yeah, the offensive linemen are going to be the last position group that'll be allowed to be able to pick whatever number they want. Like all the rest of the positions are slowly.
I think never. We were actually talking about it on the way of the game. I think they have it that because like they need to report as eligible.
That's a good point. We have recently been reminded of the
exactly.
The chaos that can ensue when we're not sure who is eligible or not. But yeah, I think you guys are right on there. I might squeeze it to an A-, but I think that Alec, you bring up a really good point of just the fact that it feels like this offense could reach another step if they're able to effectively use 2 tight ends at once. Like I said, Likely didn't get his shot until Andrews was down, and now that Likely's in, Kolar has an opportunity for more, but he's really, he's made some plays, but he really hasn't been a huge part of the game plan. That'll be interesting to see if that changes in the playoffs. Ricard smashing everyone's expectations. A lot of chatter of, he was just a product of a Greg Roman offense. He's got no place in the NFL with Greg Roman gone. Everyone forgot about the part where Monken molds his offensive scheme to the personnel who are there, and Ricard found a great spot to continue his career and was very effective. Arguably should have been a Pro Bowler this year over Ingold, but less receptions means less exposure to national media, I guess, and he didn't get it. But yeah, I mean, great year from this group. I think the only thing that could have made it better is if Andrews, when he wasn't here, was his ultimate form. I think that he was really good this year, but maybe not quite as good as he'd been in years past. Maybe he would have really turned it on had he not gotten hurt. But still, very good year from this group. Which now brings us to a fun one: offensive line. Oh man, offensive line is such an interesting one to look at. Gosh, I mean, unfortunately for this group, very old in some ways, very young in others. I think we'll start off with the good is, look, we can debate whether or not the Ravens should have drafted a center where they did, but Tyler Linderbaum is a stud. He had a strong rookie campaign. He's in the Pro Bowl this year. He deserves it. He's been a rock all year, has room to grow, but he's been phenomenal. Outside of that, obviously Stanley and Moses have battled injuries all year. Zeitler had a slow start to the year, but then solidified himself, had a good year. Simpson was up and down. There were some times he'd make really good plays. Other times he'd make penalties that just, made you shake your head. We've had the tackle rotations. Very hard for me to grade this group. I am going to give them a solid C. I think that there was some good. I think that they didn't hurt the offense and in some ways, helped us get through the running back injuries that we did. But, 37 sacks to Lamar is a bit much. There were certainly games where you would have liked to see him have more room to move in the pocket, more time back there than he did. A group that certainly has you worried with these postseason coming up. But look, I think what really gets him to the C over a C- or D+ grade is the creativity of the coaching staff to be able to get this idea late in the season to do this rotation. And how, has it been perfect? No, but I think it was an out of the box idea that has seemed to really, put some life in this unit and really help the team down the stretch.
B-. And my argument for that is, I think McCary exceeded expectations. Fulele exceeded expectations. Linderbaum exceeded expectations. Stanley Moses a little bit below. So, I guess if you look at that, that's, you put in 2 players for 2 other players, that's replacement level, and then bump it up a little bit because those replacements played better than I expected a little bit. So yeah, I say B-. Another group, I think, just, I don't want to look too far ahead, but it's certainly going to be a group in transition. There's going to be a lot of questions next year.
Certainly will be. For 2023, I'm giving them a C+, but I could also see B-. My quip was going to be C+, but this is a curved class, so I might actually get to a B-. And the reason I say that is offensive line play across the league is pretty poor, and we have so much depth in the offensive line that the fact that we can rotate our tackles and think like, oh, these are actually like NFL replacement level tackles. It's not even like you're dropping off. Like, it's impossible to say that for most teams to have a third, let alone a fourth tackle that can play reasonable snaps that aren't total liabilities. So I think that's worth something. Obviously, Linderbaum and Zeitler having good years to great years, mattering on the person we're talking about. And then I think Moses is he's low key one of the best signings of the Costas tenure because of his cost to productivity. Obviously, he was dealing with that injury, which limited him, but I thought he battled and plays really well. Stanley is just such a disaster and sadness all around because I thought he was showing glimpses of being all pro Stanley again end of last year, and he was turning it on, and then he had that week 1 injury and it was just game over. He had a really interesting interview on the Lounge. I recommend folks give it a listen, where he kind of gave perspective of he's basically having to relearn the position in many ways, fighting through these injuries. He's not able to use his body the way he once did, and maybe that'll be better next year if he plays for the Ravens or whoever he plays for, in his ability to, he has more time to kind of figure out his bodies or learn new tricks. But basically he's having to learn, he can't get his body in certain positions without his body failing on him, his knee being upset, that got injured early in the year. So it's just so tough. But Simpson, I think he has to go. He needs competition. I think it's unacceptable for him to get the job pro bono, or not. That's not the right word, but you know what I mean. Just hand on a silver platter. He needs to fight for it. So, like I said, C- or C+. with a B- curve because of overall play across the league. Defensive line, man, we're on a side defense and it's just like flowers everywhere, like so much good stuff. But I want to start it off with saying that Michael Pierce got rewarded. Interesting player, got a shortened contract as part of the Lamar Jackson negotiations. Essentially, they did some shenanigans to change his contract, and then he gets re-signed to an extension, 2 years, $7.5 million, which was called by NFL salary cap on Twitter. McFarland saying, the Ravens have done a lot of this where they extend guys at the end of the year so they can spread the bonuses. Pretty smart move to do that if you have the cap space, particularly for a guy like Pierce, who is a relatively low cap hit. I haven't seen all the particulars, but I imagine he's getting $1 million or $4.5 million in bonus money, and it's 1.5 this year, 1.5 next year, 1.5 next year, kind of thing, which is kind of just a savvy way of spreading out the costs because of the way that bonus spreading works. I don't think you can tilt it in one direction or another. You have to do it like peanut butter, smooth. But I think it's cool that he got re-signed. That gives a little bit more stability going forward in a position that has a lot of players that you don't know if they'll be back or not next year.
So what's your grade?
Oh, fair enough. I didn't get into everybody else. So Matty BK, dog. Travis Jones didn't do as much as I hoped. I thought that he could do more. Broderick Washington was a little bit of a disappointment given his contract extension and everything. Brett Urban, just constant. So I think I have to give this group a solid B+. I think Travis Jones is going to break out next year. It has to happen.
I mean, that follows the general curve, right?
Right. Yeah, I know. It's like see the potential, teases it year 2, and then year 3 is the year that they usually rocket ship or at least really start showing it.
He's got so much potential. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think B+ is about right. I think this unit was incredibly strong against the pass this year. Pass rush, that was a question we had coming into the season. So many guys were really effective there, either in rushing the passer or in getting their hands up there, like Brent Urban and Michael Pierce had a couple of pass deflections this year too. I believe. I could be wrong about that, but yeah, I mean, I think this unit could have been a little more consistent against the run. That's the one part that you look at, and I think you knock them on a bit. The Ravens did finish middle of the pack as far as rushing defense this year. And of course, not all of that's on the defensive line, but a good portion of it is. And certainly there were some games this year. You look at the game against Detroit, the game against Seattle. There were some other games where the running game, their defense was able to completely take away the opponent's running game, and the big guys up front had a big part in doing that. So, again, very good year for them. Another high B+ there. Not too much more to add. I think you hit on all the big storylines there.
Pretty much same. Especially for Matabike. I feel like Matabike is almost his own guy. I mean, Matabike, I feel like he's A+. I feel like, I kind of doubted Calais before he left. He was like, hey, I don't want to come back because you got these guys who are amazing. And, we talked about Matabike being always falling short of the potential that he felt he had. And I think this year, I mean, we were kind of down on him and then completely blew those expectations out of the water. I mean, his snap count, amazing. His sack productions, amazing. I think you bring up great points. On the negative side, I think depth and for guys like Travis and Broderick, you wanted to see a little bit more. They've shown more, but overall, a very solid group. But let's go on to linebackers, and I guess we have to include outside linebackers and off-ball linebackers here. For me, I feel like A. Honestly, I mean, between Rowe and Queen continuing to elevate their game, play great, particularly in pass defense, have been great. For the outside linebackers, I feel like, between Clowney and Van Noy picking them up late in the season, they set career highs for sacks. Huge reason for why the Ravens led in the sacks this year, in addition to defensive line. I feel like you can nitpick a little bit and say Owe didn't play as well as he could, or Ojabo got hurt, or, whatever. But I feel like there were enough contributors on this team that played at an exceptionally high level that I would just give it an A.
Yeah, Odafe only had 5 sacks this year, which is a bit of a disappointment. Like you said, I didn't know if you were going to do inside linebacker or outside linebacker split up. In my head, I was doing the split up, and I said inside linebacker A. How can you deny that? You had 2 Pro Bowlers from the same team inside linebacker. That might be a first. And then you had outside linebacker. I was going to say B plus, but I could even say see A minus. So I'm going to say as a whole group, solid A, because Clowney career year, Van Noy career year, and those guys were just like mercenaries. Tyus Bowser didn't play a single snap, and they had to adjust and adjusted well. Kind of introducing a committed nickel team. Who would have thought it? And then, I think like Tavius Robinson showed good flashes. Malik Ham was hurt all year, but Jeremiah Moon even had some productivity. Malik Harrison, I thought, is going to be a NFL survivor as far as playing great special teams and really adequate running down play. I think, the whole unit did so well. David Ojabo, we didn't even talk about him. He looked strong until he got hurt, I mean, this unit was out of control as far as potential and depth. I mean, Trent Simpson and Deshaun Phillips never really had to play snaps, but when they did, like I said, I thought they looked competent. So just an unbelievably deep and powerful group that I think is the cornerstone of why this team on defense is so good.
Yeah, it's an A. I mean, we could nitpick here and the pass rush faded a little bit down the stretch, picked up a little bit these past few games. But I think, again, like we said, you're relying on some guys who've been in the league for a while, have a lot of tread on their tires. It's kind of expected at that point. I think that the Ravens, we've said it many times before, with Clowney and Vanoy, they hit the biggest jackpots that they've hit with these free agent signings, these midseason, before season, in Clowney's case, training camp cut signings. And yeah, excellent season from that group. The rock of this defense, absolutely great. And then of course your secondary, man, I think you gave it another A. Again, just look at the injuries that this group has had to weather. Marcus Williams got hurt early again. Geno Stone, what does he do? He comes in, plays phenomenal, leads the league in interceptions in his time there. Marcus Williams comes back. He maintains that spot, gets a couple more picks, is second in the league, I believe, as it stands right now. Brandon Stevens, what a year he's had. Just a guy who's shown some potential. Just turned into a lockdown corner this year. Marlon, not his best year, but I think still a very strong one. Obviously, he's given up a couple big plays, but I think that he's done a good job at figuring out where his body is and adjusting his game to that. Kind of like we've not to the extent that we've talked about with Stanley, but I think that he's had to go through a little bit of a path like that as well this year. And then Ronald Darby, Arthur Millette, guys who come in, we didn't know what to expect from them at all. They've been stalwart all year. And Kyle Hamilton. We have so many good guys on this secondary that it almost made me forget to talk about the guy who's been the biggest star there all year. Just been a completely game changer for our defense. This is what you get when you have a quality franchise, a quality front office. It did not seem like we needed the safety when they drafted him. Of course, we knew that they wouldn't pass him up if he fell to us because of the hype around him. I don't know what the Falcons were thinking. With all due respect to Drake London, they could have definitely used him. Still could a lot of those teams that passed on him. I'm so glad he's in Baltimore. What he's doing in just season number 2, man. Kyle Hamilton, the exclamation point on this A for this Ravens secondary this year.
That's the question. Actually, we traded immediately after that pick, Hollywood Brown, and they had that huge wide receiver run. What wide receiver did they have higher on their board than Kyle Hamilton? Which one of these wide receivers would have ruined our opportunity to get Kyle Hamilton? Not that they're necessarily even bad players. It's just like that's a question worth asking. But then again, like if someone didn't take a wide receiver, they'd take Kyle Hamilton, right? So who knows? But yeah, he is just something else. I want to go A- for this group, and I don't even want it to. Actually, I'm not going to. I'm changing it to just full on A because the depth is unbelievable. It's like oh, I'm a little disappointed in Marcus Williams, but he had an injury, so like who knows? Oh, same thing with Marlon Humphrey, injury, so who knows? But then the amount of like stud contributions from guys that were either off the street or not expected to play like that. I like Stone. I thought Stone was going to be good. I wasn't terribly surprised that he had success, frankly. I think it was a little like exaggerated success, but it wasn't like I thought he was extremely competent play, and then he got a lot of INTs, which is cool. Brandon Stevens though, like unbelievable level jump, the biggest level jump maybe we've covered, and as far as doing the show together. Arthur Millette again, kind of like off the street, excellent slot signing, and then Hamilton is number 1 in the league, and Darby excellent, and Yasin not even that bad. But like again, surprising that he was not a starter. We thought like going in he'd be a starter, and that's how much better everyone played than expectation. And then Ardarius got hurt, so like just an unbelievable like the depth is what pushed it from an A- to an A to me.
Yeah, I feel like only my thought here is guys like you guys mentioned, guys like Hamilton, Millette, Darby, Stevens. Actually, I should say Hamilton, Stevens, and Millette, Darby. Those guys certainly push this group way up into an A. My only concern, really, it's funny we talk about depth being good, but I do think it's somewhat top heavy. I feel like when you get to the bottom of the depth chart, you're like, okay, who behind Millette played nickel? The answer is really nobody. It was Kyle Hamilton, Millette, or nobody. Pepe, Armour Davis didn't really have significant snaps. Ardarius has been hurt. He just got, he might be activated.
Yeah.
So really you're looking at like any of the young corners that we looked at last year, none of them really played at all. So, I mean, if I'm looking forward, I have no idea. They're all question marks. Fortunately, Stevens is still under contract, so he's good. Marlowe's obviously here. But after that, I mean, there were a lot of mercenaries. So it worked out really well this year. But that's really my only concern. It's just the young depth. We have no idea what we have right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then special teams. So, I mean, we talked a little bit about Tucker, a little bit of below year for him, but still obviously very good. I think ended the season strong, made a bunch of field goals. Stout, but definitely looked improved from last year. I think it was a strong year for him. And then if we're looking at, kick return, punt return, obviously Duvernay got hurt. I feel like it was a little bit of a down year for him, not his best in a lot of phases. But we did have that exciting, punt return to win the game from Wallace near the end of the season. That was great. And, Justice Hill also kind of filled in on there as well as far as kick returns and had a couple of exciting runs as well. So I don't know. I feel like for me overall, maybe B. I think it was a good year. Not the best, but I think it was pretty good.
Yeah, I'm gonna take off my Baltimore bias of like special teams supposed to be like the best in the world, like all class, and say we're B+ this year. But it's not quite, A- or A. I think it's a solid B+. We had concerns about the special teams coverage wise for a little bit there, a little streaky. We had the Tucker conversation about his kicks of general unreasonable length, and then Stout had a second year that was pretty strong. So and kind of the lost storyline is Ott filling in as the long snapper after the Moore injury. So yeah, I think okay, pretty good. I would say B+.
Yeah, I think B+. I think that in some ways it was an unspectacular year, but solid year for special teams, sprinkled in with the Wallace punt return touchdown as a all-time Ravens play. You get the punt return touchdown for the win in overtime was huge. Stout had some memorable punts. I think he definitely took a step this year. It's unfortunate that what Tucker had the luck that he did. Hopefully, he'll have chances to show that he can still do it, because I think he still has the leg, but something's going on with that unit. But luckily, everything that you really need a field goal kicker for, he still is able to do. Those booming kicks, generally you're doing those because your offense puts you in a bad situation, right? And it was always great that we had Tucker to be able to bail us out in those situations. But ideally, even if you have a kicker that can do it, you don't really want to be in those situations. So I don't think that we can knock the special teams unit as a whole, or even Tucker himself, down that much for him, not being his usual excellent self from those incredibly difficult kicks. So yeah, strong unit. I think it's got better as the season went on. There was some, I think the coverage was a little spottier in the beginning of the year, but really tightened up as the year went on. I think that unit's in great condition for this playoff run.
Lastly, let's talk about the coaches. And the only assistant coach that's not getting requests for head coaching roles is the special teams coach. Poor guy. not going to be able to pull a Harbaugh maybe this year. But Monken is getting asked to be a coach. Weaver is being asked to be a coach. And McDonald, who we all thought would be asked, is also getting asked to be a coach. So, they don't have the job, but they're getting requested for interviews. And I think it's a solid A- for this group. I think, Monken has had an incredible year one. I would love to see what a year two could look like. I really do think another year under Monken would be astounding. I really think one more year, man, because we could see the growing pains at the beginning of the year, get him a little bit more accustomed to the people we have and everyone getting more accustomed to it. I think it could be wheels up even more year two, but we'll see if we get the opportunity. And then defense has been number one in the league for a reason. Just unbelievable level of coaching on that side of the ball. Definitely want to give Weaver some credit too, because he's the assistant coach to Harbaugh and is getting a lot of recognition. I thought he could have been our defensive coordinator in a different universe, and it seems like he might just skip being a defensive coordinator in his next round of. I think he did it before, right, with Houston, but I think he's going to skip right to head coach next time he is promoted.
A lot of strong coaches, I think. Like we talked about with players and things like that. There were some good, there was some bad. I think overall super positive. The defensive coaching staff, I think, particular, super super deep. It's been pretty good. I feel like A- is fair. If I were nitpicking a little bit, I'd say Harbaugh. Some challenging some of the decisions to challenge some certain things. I get it, extra time, but some of those were just not great calls if we're talking about in-game coaching. But I feel like that's nitpicking a little bit. Overall, it's a strong roster, strong coaching. There's not a lot of weaknesses to this team, I think. So, which gotta hope they gotta, biggest thing, man, they gotta keep it together. They gotta keep the guys focused and these next couple of weeks. Otherwise, it'll be another has-been season, or what could have been season.
Oh man. Yeah, nothing really more to add there. Strong coaching seasons from everyone.
Well, that wraps it up. I would love to hear your grades, guys. Feel free to message us either on Twitter @OneWinningPod, threads @OneWinningPod, or of course email us onewinningpod@gmail.com. We'll be enjoying a week of relaxation. Enjoy watching the wild card round. Maybe grab a drink with a friend and watch some of these games and root for whatever box set you so desire. Let us know your box sets in the comments too. But we'll be back next week to kind of look at this divisional matchup and stay locked in from there. Go Ravens.